Hello and welcome to the oddschecker betting show. This is the Royal Ascot Day 2 preview sponsored by Sky Bet. I'm your host, George Elek, and as was the case for the Day 1 preview last week, I'm joined by two expert tipsters, Rory Delargy and oddschecker's very own Andy Holding. Great to have you both here. We did the pleasantries, I think, last time, and anyone who hasn't listened to Day 1 should go back and do so if you want to hear both how Rory and Andy look at Ascot and the quirks of the course and the type of horse that they look to back here. But Andy, let's talk, because it's now Monday. We are previewing Wednesday's racing here, but the racing does get going tomorrow. In terms of the weather, I think it's pretty clear what will be the case in terms of what the ground will be like, but we can expect them to do a fair bit of watering. So how do we expect that, this baking hot heat wave we're going through at the moment to affect the week's racing?
I think as a punter, you're looking at almost splitting the week in half. I think most of my confident, decent business will be taking place in the first 2 days, knowing that I'm going to be punting on a fairly level playing field. Looking at the weather forecast, I think Rory's probably looked at the same maps as I have, and we could get up to anything up to 28 mil apparently through Thursday into Friday. So the spanner is very much thrown into the works for later on in the week. So I'm already looking at shifting the way I'm thinking for Thursday, Friday. For instance, the Gold Cup. You've got Stradivarius against Trushan again. I mean, it's a no-brainer. When we're looking at that race, what the value is at this very moment in time, if, of course, the forecast rain comes in great dollops. But for the first 2 days, we've already spoke about the first day, that's not going to change much. And the one thing about the Day 2, which we're going to talk about now, is which we haven't got the information for, is how the draw's going to pan out. The draw's just come through for Day 2. We'll only really know whether our opinions are valid, if you like, based on what happens on the first day. For instance, looking at the Hunt Cup and the ridiculous amount of horses in the Windsor Castle, a full 28 sort of complement there, whether dominate as they have done over the last 2 or 3 years. So there's still quite a bit of ambiguity to some of these contests.
Yeah, there are indeed. And Rory, Andy mentioned there that the spanner's thrown in the works when the rain starts coming down on Thursday and Friday. Do you look at that the same way, or is that another opportunity maybe to get an edge on the market?
It's not always easy knowing, it seems like a strange thing to say, what effect rain is going to have, because looking back a couple of years ago, you can see the historic going readings across the track. And I think a couple of years ago, it was 8.9 in the middle of the track on the straight course. But the going was soft come the end of the day. And all they had was that there was a forecast for a couple of showers during the day. And there was officially 5 mils of rain. And the going ended up soft. Whereas last year, the going was on the soft side coming into the meeting. And then they had half an inch of rain they weren't expecting overnight. And yet the first race time was a good to firm race time. So it's not an easy place to read sometimes, Ascot. Really heavy overnight rain seems to make it faster, and a little bit of drizzle through the day turns it into a bog. So, it rather depends how the track has been prepared in advance. You just can't assume, X amount of rain equals good to soft or soft ground. You've got to be aware of what the weather's doing straight after that as well. When they put a bit of water down and it's a blazing hot day, then the effect of that, it doesn't often get that far down into the ground. It's evaporating almost as quickly as it's going down. And other times, as I said, a small amount of moisture can seem to make a big difference. So you've got to keep analysing each day's racing based on the results that you see. Look at race times. Look at, horses who've got historic form on fast ground or historic form on soft ground, and see how they're getting on. So even if the going is officially good to firm and you're seeing horses who've got soft ground form running perfectly well, then you bear that in mind for horses with similar profiles later on. So always keep thinking, never make assumptions for the entire meeting ahead of time.
Sage advice there from Rory, I think, in all things rather than just racing racing punting. We'll move on to the first race in a second. Just before we do so, going to point you in the direction of the oddschecker app, which you should download now. You'll get the very best prices, the best place terms, bookie offers, free bets, and some of the best tipsters in the game, including Andy himself, whose columns will be live on the app. First place you can get them every morning around about 9 o'clock. On to the first race of the day then, and it is the 2:30, the Queen Mary, the fillies race over 5 furlongs. And it could be a good day for Wesley Ward, someone we're going to be talking about a fair bit in this podcast. He's got a few runners on Wednesday, and Twilight Gleaming is the favourite in the first at 7-2. Yet is 8-1 alongside Artos, who's also over from the States. Nymphadora 9-1, Quick Susie 12-1, Illustrating 12-1, 14-1, Desert Dreamer, and Beautiful Sunshine as well. It's a 2-year-old race, Andy, so I'm coming to you first here. But again, another market, as is often the case with these races at Royal Ascot, which is dominated by a couple of horses that have travelled over the Atlantic to be here.
Yeah, it always makes life difficult for me, really, as a time analyst, to have a view either way on a horse like Twilight Gleaming, because just don't know how good she is. You have to almost go back to a bygone era, if you like, when I did start in this game and use on your eyes and your visual perceptions of what a horse is like and how fast they can, rather than actually have the objective view of sticking a number on and awarding horses' performances based on the clock. All I can say about Twilight Gleaming, I've watched both of her videos back, really impressed with the second one, but I was even more impressed with just a little bit of her work the other day at Keeneland, and when Wesley Ward took the wraps off all his Royal Ascot Tour horses. She worked with a horse called Lucci, who's one of the favourites for the Norfolk Stakes. Now, if Lucci's favourite and has been well back to win the Norfolk Stakes, then there's a good chance, in my estimation, this Twilight Gleaming will go very close in the Queen Mary based on that work. She seemed to just saunter alongside the colt and do everything very, very comfortably. This is a race that Wesley Ward as well traditionally has done really well in. I think he's better over 5 furlongs, a lot of his horses are, than the 6. Sometimes they haven't quite stretched out to 6 and they've come unstuck. So I think this is the race and the Windsor Castle you want to be attacking Wesley Ward horses. Pure, unadulterated, raw pace is what they're all about. And she's gone and bagged what perceivably is a good draw, still 20. I'm not saying that is guaranteed. We've seen it to the first day, but history dictates that the near side tends to be the place to be. Obviously, this is a big field this year, and they can be spread all over the track, so it's not guaranteed. But the likes of Quick Susie as well, a horse that I've been following in Ireland, has got very, very good raw pace. I would imagine that would lead through the first half of the race. It's certainly going to give Johnny Velasquez every chance with Twilight Gleaming to take in a nice lead. So I would say that she's probably a worthy favourite based on what I've seen of her. I don't think we've got too many absolute standout candidates over here. We've got a lot of horses that run reasonably good times, nothing off the scale. They've all been running mid-80 time figures, which is they're all respectable, but nothing's gone through the 90 barrier to suggest they're a complete and utter flying machine. So of the ones I've seen over here, I think you'd have to respect Nymphadora. I do like Desert Dream as a horse. I think she's got a run style that'll soon be suited to Ascot because she doesn't press the pace and she comes through late. She did really well to win last time out at Newmarket. She was very good the first day when she met the Rising Ground and beat a good field, and that race has worked out really well. I'd respect her. And I also think Illustrating could be of a fair standard, having clocked a good time at Catrick on her debut. I like the way she went through her race. She looked a classy filly and did everything very easy. And then you've got the 2 horses off from the Dundalk race, Yetic and Orinoco River, that they obviously look very good. So a real nasty conundrum, and not one that I've got a definitive view on. But what I've seen, I'm sure Rory's seen the same videos, but what I've seen of that Twilight Gleaming, she could easily emulate the likes of Jealous Again and a few others that showed just brazen pace and were just far too good for the English and Irish.
At the prices now, you think 7-2 could be the value there?
Arguably, yeah. I mean, I think it'll get bigger on the day. I think they basically moved the price, and a lot depends on how Coffee Maker gets on in the first race as well.
Yeah.
On the second race, if that goes and wins, then obviously the price will shorten. That gets beat. Everyone will think, oh, I'll take a chance. If she drifted to something like 4, 9-2, 5-1, let's say, and bookmakers are offering 4 or 5 places, and the stand side was definitely dominant, then I think she becomes bet material.
Yeah, well, 7-2 at the moment, might get bigger. Illustrating their 12-1, a positive word for just one run for Carl Burke. Rory, Andy's struggling to find anything that he wants to kind of stick his hand up and say that's the one for me. Is that the case with you too? Yes,
I mean, Andy summed it up really well. Twilight Gleaming looks really good, but as Andy said, it's very difficult to make comparisons between the US form and the form that's been shown here. I think Yet's a very nice filly, which doesn't strike me as a Queen Mary filly. I'd have thought she'd have been in the Albany, and slightly odd that they're putting a tongue tie on her, given that she found tons for pressure on debut. So I can't believe for a second she had any kind of breathing problem there. But yeah, on pedigree, she wants her dam's half sister to Giant's Causeway, and she's going to want 7 furlongs in time. So whether she's got the raw speed for 5 here is another matter. But she should at least be doing her best work late, and she looked very genuine when winning at Dundalk. I wouldn't, given quick grind at Ascot, she's very much bred for that. But I'd have been keen on backing her in the Albany over 6. So it's a little bit galling to see her in here over 5 against what could be an absolute flying machine. And in Twilight Gleaming, Andy's mentioned all the interesting horses, really. I like Nymphadora. I was with her at York last time out. I thought she was a little bit unlucky on her debut. She was miles better than the Bear Result. But of course, that debut is a really interesting race. That was a race won by Desert Dreamer for Stuart Williams. Now, Stuart doesn't train too many first-time two-year-old winners. But Desert Dreamer won despite looking green and being unfancied on debut. And those that she beat have done really well since. Ballerina Lady has won again. Nymphadora obviously won the Marygate Stakes at York. Devious Angels won. Beautiful Sunshine, who was 8th, won next time out. Canonized, who was 9th, won next time out. Form has worked out tremendously well. And that's the kind of race I'd be looking for as a springboard for this. She then stepped up to 6 furlongs next time out and raced quite freely, but she still won. That probably wasn't any better form than her debut. But given how well the debut has worked out, you'd have thought Desert Dreamer would have a chance here. And how the race is going to be run at a furious pace. And that's, I'd be very surprised if it wasn't a sort of point and go type race. And that's just a Desert Dreamer, who will stay a little bit further and who came from off the pace to win on debut. Whereas a lot of these they've won by dominating and they'll be blazing speed again. And I think a lot of them will be vulnerable through the last furlong of the race. So Nymphadora, again, she came from off the pace when winning at York, not from miles back. And I think she'll run a decent race again. But whether she's got the raw speed of the American filly is another matter altogether. And you do have the complication of the draw. Looking at the going readings that Ascot have produced today, the suggestion is it's slightly faster on the stand side. And I think in medium-sized fields, they tend to race up the middle. And there's often not a huge amount in the draw. It depends how the race pans out. When the fields get very big, then there is a possibility of a bias towards those drawn very high. We might see that through the week. Some of these two-year-old races have got huge fields, and I think the horses in the 20s could do very well. So again, that's slightly off-putting for Desert Dreamer, who's drawn in stall 7. But Quick Susie's drawn in 22, and she's going to go fast there. So the obvious conclusion is that the horses who are drawn high might just have the edge there. But as Andy says, it's a tough race to price up and a tough race to get involved in. It's going to be hard to know that you've got value in that. And of course, there's going to be a lot of fluctuation in prices as well. So a tough start to the day.
Tough start to the day. The eagle-eared knight amongst you may be wondering where the Sky Bet offer is. Our sponsors, Sky Bet, do have an offer, but it's not in the first race. So it'll be coming up soon. That money back as cash offer coming up in another race in the day. So not the opener. But we'll move on to the second race, the 3:05, and it's the Queen's Vase. Wordsworth is the 5-2 favourite ahead of Ruling at 17-2. Arturo Costanini is 9-1 alongside Kamari, with Taipan 11-1 and Stoll 12-1, 14-1 bar. 15 run here over the mile 6, Rory. And Wordsworth, again, this is if Wesley Ward or the American horse, I should say, dominated the first, then Aidan O'Brien's got the star hand here in the second race of the day.
Wordsworth's an obvious one. He wouldn't be the highest rated in the race, but he does look like he's progressing along the right lines. Stepped out to mile and 5 last time out when just beaten by Sir Lucan. That looks pretty solid form, and he'll improve back on quicker ground. His win at the Curragh came on good to firm. So the step up and trip and the ground here will suit him down to the ground. He's an obvious enough favourite. I'm not sure there's an enormous angle in backing him at the current prices. There's some, it's not, Aidan O'Brien does very well in this race, but he's not the only trainer whose horses tend to run well here. But Mark Johnson had quite a good hand as well. Dancing King has come from handicaps, and he was rated 73 on his reappearance. But he's improved to win all 4 of his starts in handicaps, both on the all-weather and on turf. And he was quite impressive winning last time. It wasn't a big margin. He beat Kondo Asami by a neck last time out. They didn't go particularly fast there. It turned into a little bit of a sprint up the straight at Doncaster. I thought that looked a very competitive handicap, though, and I would treat it as very strong form. He should go well. I was already proven over the trip. That was a mile. That was the St Ledger course and distance, and he might end up being a Ledger horse, Dancing King. But I wouldn't put you off back in the runner-up. Now he was getting way up there, and he doesn't have an obvious I'll leave the runner up because he hasn't been declared. I want to keep him on side because although he was beaten there, I thought he did very well the way that race panned out. But I think Dancing King's got a decent chance on paper based on that. People don't really like handicappers in group races, but I just like improvers in races like the Queen's Vase, and Mark Johnson has done well in the race in the past. So I like him at least as much as Wordsworth at the prices. I also like Arturo Toscanini as a project for Aidan O'Brien, but I don't think he wants this ground. He was very disappointing on his reappearance at Newmarket, where he looked like he absolutely hated quick ground. There may be other reasons for that, but he was in trouble very, very early on, and he was beaten 27 lengths in that mile and a furlong, a contest at the Craven Beaten in the Field and Stakes. But he ran much better at the Curragh last time out, in the Gallinule Stakes back on heavy ground. That was a very good performance. I think he's got group races in him down the line, but I suspect it will be on softer ground again. I thought he showed an excellent latitude in his debut, but his two big runs have come on heavy ground, so difficult to back him in this.
Yeah, well, positive words there from Rory for Dancing King, for Mark Johnson, who's 14-1 best price, and Arturo Toscanini, maybe not the day for him this time, but one to keep an eye on. He's 9-1 for this race on Wednesday. Andy?
Yeah, similar to the first race at the moment, I'm fairly lukewarm. Time might change and I might come up with something, but with Wordsworth, I can't really work him out yet. I don't know whether I like him or not. He's a bit of a Marmite horse. He's probably like a bit of an honest villain at the moment, if that makes any sense. He was good first time out at the Curragh. I liked his attitude that day. And then last time he kind of just threw it away a little bit when Sir Lucan came alongside him. And I thought, he should have won that, and he didn't. Quite surprised that Sir Lucan isn't in this race, by the way. I thought he would have been the obvious candidate. But they finished nicely clear of a horse called Party House, who we've got a lot of time for. A nice village early on. So I think the form's all right. Whether he's a 5-2 shot in this field, I don't know. I think this race is more about breeding more than anything else. You look at traditionally, you want stoutly bred horses like Stole, for instance, by Zoffana. You'd immediately cross it off your list just looking at that stamina-wise. I think Aidan O'Brien has got a strong hand here. Arturo Toscanini's been mentioned by Rory in dispatches, and I respect him, but I'd almost be prepared to give Kyprios one more go. He was very good on the numbers first time out at Cork on good ground. Then he went to Lingfield, one of the fancies to win the Lingfield Derby Trot. As we know, he bumped into the likes of Third Realm and Adayar. I was a bit disappointed that day. I tipped him in my column and I was scratching my head wondering why he'd run so below par. But obviously the time figure of the race and the way it's panned out proves that he probably didn't run as bad as what they first feared. And back on better ground, you'd say, well, okay, let's roll the dice with him again. And look, he's drifted out to 14, 16-1 because he technically put in one bad run, but, like I say, it was on soft ground. Stall 15's a little bit of a niggle out on the wing a bit. It's a relatively short run to the bend here, isn't it? It's Ascot to get into the corner to go down Swinley Bottom. You don't really want that in an ideal world. But, just value-wise, price-wise, I think he's the one that's the most overlooked.
Interesting, yeah. Kyprios at the moment is 16-1 best price as it stands. Yeah, 16-1 for Kyprios. Does look like the O'Brien third string, I guess, in the race, but maybe that can sometimes be a bit over-egged in the market, maybe. As Andy's saying, maybe the forgotten horse in this second race of the day. On to the thirds, the Duke of Cambridge Stakes, where Lady Bowthorpe is the 2-1 favourite ahead of Queen Power at 9-2. Double or Bubble 12-1. Onassis is 14-1. Lavender Blue 14-1. Champions Elysee is 14-1 as well, 16-1 bar. Andy, over to you. Lady Bowthorpe, a horse we've discussed before on this podcast a couple of times.
Yeah, I don't see too many chinks in her armoury, but that's been affected by, reflected, in her price around about the 2-1 mark. A run behind Palace Pia was probably, very unexpected in many respects, that she had got good, solid sort of Group 3 form going into it. But I must admit, she caught me unawares. I put her up a couple of times in a column last year, so I've always had a healthy respect for her based on her time figures. But even I was taken aback by that run. I mean, she beat some good horses that day, and there did appear to be any fluke about it, really, to be honest. She's got a run style to suggest Ascot straight track will suit her as well. She has won on the round track, but a straight track even more so because she's often held up. buried amongst runners, travelling well, and then she comes through at the end. She saves all her energy for the back end of the race. So from that point of view, I haven't got a problem with that. They're bound to go good gallop here as well. There looks at least 2 or 3 front runners as far as I could see. Parents' Prayer obviously being one of them. So that shouldn't be a problem on that front. Again, whether I want to take 2 to 1 about her is up to question. Beyond her, I think an assist could be overlooked just because the fact we haven't seen a bit of recency bias, obviously with plenty of other horses that have been around for a little while. But she won first time out here last year, albeit on soft ground. But she's got amazing kind of record here at Ascot on the straight track. I thought she was an unbelievable race in the 6th furlong Group 1 towards the back end of the year. She just probably would have needed another furlong to be, called the winner. But I think that, stepping up to a mile is going to be ideal for her. I wouldn't rule her out running a big race. So yeah, those are my early thoughts. And Lady Beaufort's perfectly okay at that respected at that price. But an assist, if I had to have an each way alternative or something without the favourite, would be the one I'd be looking.
We're recording this at 12:30 on Monday, so final decks have only been out, or the markets have only been live for about an hour or so. And Assis opened up at 16 to 1 already into 14 to 1 best price. So people out there, Andy, agreeing with you.
I think she's a dangerous float at a big price. Yeah,
Sandringham winner last year for Charlie Fellows and Hayley Turner. Hayley rides again. Rory.
I did put one up for this in the Irish field as being overpriced at the post. And I'm going off her a little bit because of the draw that she's got. That's Lavender's Blue, who's she's in it as about 16 to 1 or thereabouts. That's too big a price when you consider that she was involved in a 3-way photo for the Dahlia Stakes over a mile and a furlong, which is arguably a furlong beyond her very best, when she was beaten ahead and neck by Lady Bullthorpe and Queen Power. Lady Bullthorpe and Queen Power first and second favourites for this. She should only be 2 or 3 points bigger really than those on that effort. Obviously, Lady Bullthorpe has gone and run that massive race in the Lockage since. I can understand that, but there are horses who've been behind her, the Indie Angels and the Posters of this world, who she left well behind at Newmarket for similar sort of prices to her in this. And I thought that was wrong, but she has ended up drawing stall 1, and I have a feeling that might be a bad place to be in this race. I hope not, because I'm committed to her already. But there's pace on both sides. I say both sides of the track. It's a 13-runner race, so they're going to race up the centre here. And so there's pace from Forat in stall 3, and there's pace from Parents' Prayer in stall 10. The one pitch you don't really have an awful lot of paces in the middle, but you do have the class animals there. So you can kind of see the front runners sort of converging towards the middle, and the likes of the Lady Bullthorpe, Shoppers Elise, Posted, Onassis sitting in behind in the middle and looking to come with a run from there. Maybe that will help Lavender's Blue get across to the other runners. I don't want to see her stuck out in the wing as the race develops, but it may well be that because you've got a lack of pace in the middle, that the whole field sort of concertinas together, which would help her chances. But yeah, she wants very fast ground. She wants a mile. She's had decent form over a couple of seasons. She's had a couple of poor runs in her career, but she suffered from something called thumps when she was well beaten in the Oaks, which is it's the equine version of hiccups, but it's actually quite serious, and that explains 1 or 2 of her poor runs. But she bounced back when winning on fast ground at Sandown as a 3-year-old. I do quite like her. I think she tends to be underrated, and hopefully the fitting of cheek pieces. So she wandered around a tiny bit under pressure at Newmarket. Maybe the fitting of cheek pieces will just help her there as well. So she's my each way pick there, but I don't think she's got a particularly strong chance of beating Lady Bullthorpe. I just thought, from a mathematical viewpoint, she was overpriced, considering that's a good form line in this race.
Always looking for the value, and Lavender Blue at 14 to 1. A few firms already going 4 places as well. The way to go for Rory, 14 to 1, best price as it stands. On then to the feature race of day 2, the Prince of Wales Stakes, and Sky Bet, the sponsors of this show, have the money back as cash offer. So your first bet on this race, the win part or the winning singles or the win part of an each way bet will be refunded in cash. Free bets and cashed out bets are excluded, and eligibility restrictions do apply. You can find out further info on the T's and C's. 18 plus only. You can find out all the details at begambleaware.org. But yeah, money back as cash for your first bet or the win part of the each way bet on the Prince of Wales Stakes with our sponsors Sky Bet. A cracking offer there. And a fascinating race, it's fair to say. And the market itself, you can see here, cannot really make sense of what we can expect here. Love is the 2-1 favourite, best price, but as short as 6-4 elsewhere. Lord North is the 5-2 second favourite, but is favourite with other firms as well. One firm going 7-4, joint favouritism the 2. Armory is 3-1 pretty much across the board. And then Ordea is 16-1, Myoberon 25-1, Sangarius 33s, Desert Encounter 50s. Andy, I'll come to you first here. Between the top 3 in the market, as I say, differing views, let's say, between some of the firms at this early stage. Who would you have as being the one to go favourite for the Prince of Wales?
Yeah, I've already got involved in this race, so I'm not going to change my mind when doing this recording. I've already backed Armory. He's an out-and-out mile and a quarter horse as far as I could see. His best time figure came over a mile and a quarter. Whether Love's a mile and a quarter horse, I don't know. And she was good, obviously, when she won the Guineas over a mile, and then she went up to a mile and a half. So you'd like to think somewhere in between and be fine for Love, but she's still got to go and prove that. I'm surprised that Ryan Moore's riding Love. I think he's entitled to keep the ride on her, having rode us a Group 1 victory 3 times last season. It's hard to get off a horse like that, in all fairness. He'd be kicking himself up, wouldn't he? But I don't see Shemmy Effingham riding Armory as a negative, or actually Ryan Moore deserting Armory as a negative either. I just think it's just a very, very difficult decision to make. And as we've seen time and time again, it's not a decision that always means you're on the wrong horse if you back the other one of Aidan Bronson. I think Ryan Moore's probably got it wrong more times than he has right, or they've given him the ride. I don't think probably it's necessarily even Ryan Moore's choice. I think he's often ridden the favourite or the horse that he's ridden more times in the past. But I do like Armory. His time figure, as I said, at Chester was very good. His last 3 furlongs when he won on the Rudy that day were quicker than El Astronauti over the 5 furlong sprinter John Quinn's. And that was off the back of a very strong final circuit as well. I mean, the last circuit was like 25 lengths quicker than the Chester Cup. There was another good race on that card. I can't remember what it was now, but they were really rattling on, and he really showed a good turn of foot. So I'm very happy with the bet I've had of Armory, despite obviously respecting Love and, of course, Lord North, last year's winner.
Armory 3-1 then for Andy. So unable to answer my question as to who he thought was the... Well, I suppose in your view, should Armory be the rightful favourite then, Andy? I mean, if you're backing him at 3s.
Well, that's just my personal view. I think he should be shorter, but
yeah,
he's not going to be, because Ryan Moore's now chosen to ride Love. If he would have been the other way around, Armory would have been a sort of 2-1 9 or 4 shot. So that jockey booking has meant that Armory's sort of drifted out a little bit, but I don't think it makes much odds, if I'm being honest, George.
Yeah. I think Lord North is one of the best bets of the card. It's a very tricky day, but I'm a little wary of Love, because she's been penciled in for a number of potential returns, and it hasn't really materialised. I just wonder whether she's been showing her best form at home. But she's going to run here, so at least she does. She's still in training, at least. But I'm not mad to back her. Not because I'm against her on her form last season. She was terrific last year. It's a real shame we didn't see her after the Yorkshire Oaks. And at her best, she'll take plenty of beating. But she needs to progress again. Because she's now a 4-year-old, and she's she'd have been getting weight off these horses last season. So you never really stand still in this game. I respect her chances, but I'm just worried about the fact that she's not been seen since August, and the vibes don't feel terrific to me with her. Armory, I respect, but again, I certainly respect what Andy says regarding the time of the Chester race, but it was set up beautifully for him. I think Sangarius is overrated and easy to beat at this sort of level. He wasn't too far clear of Pallavicino in 3rd. He certainly deserves his crack at a Group 1 after that, because he's won his Group 2. He was placed in a couple of Group 1s last year, and certainly deserves another chance to get one on the board. And I wouldn't rule him out, and I wouldn't be laying him in this race. But I just think Lord North is going to be best suited by conditions. He was hugely impressive in this race last year, and he was hugely impressive again at Meydan. I know they found a bit of blood in his nostril after that race, but it didn't affect his performance on the day, and I can't think it's a major problem. And although he's not been seen since, he'll have been teed up perfectly for this race by John Gosden, and I think he should be closer to even money in this Well, even money might be pushing it a little bit, but I think he should definitely be a clear favourite here because there's slight question marks over Love and whether she's really ready to go. Whereas I think he definitely will be. So he looks it was a big price to me, all things considered.
Two strong views there. Andy with Armory at 3-1. Rory with Lord North currently best price 5-2. A couple of good ones to go out with the Sky Bet money back as cash offer. Your first bets, either a win bet or the win part of an each way bet, refunded in cash. T's and C's applied. Do check the website to see those. On then to the 5 o'clock, the Royal Hunt Cup. Rory will be staying with you to kick off this one. And Finest Sound is the 7-1 favourite ahead of Hakiki at 10-1. Magical Morning 12-1. Grove Ferry 14s alongside Astro King and Irish Admiral. Matthew Flinders 16s, Brunch 16s, Path of Thunder 18s alongside Lafayette, Eastern World 20-1 bar. Currently, all 30 in now. We can see, unlike the other podcasts where we're still kind of guessing who's running, we know who's going here. We can see the draw, Rory. And where does that leave you at this stage?
I want to be drawn high here because you got a 33 runner field, and when fields get this big at Ascot, there's almost always a bias towards the very high numbers. Also, the pace in this race looks to be concentrated between middle and high. The fastest horses early on in this race, arguably Maidani, Teston, maybe Varian, are drawn between the middle and the high numbers. I think that makes it pretty hard for those drawn low. And I think it will set it up nicely for those drawn towards the stands rail, which is handy because the two horses I fancied Andy Post are both drawn high, 1 on 25 and 1 on 30. In a race of this size, I'm inclined to take two against the field. And ironically, the two horses I was with in the Lincoln, which didn't work out then. And I'm hoping that Hakiki doesn't come and do me again. But Brunch, for me, is very solid. He's a horse who always does his best work late over a mile. He had a good season last year, and he carried on. I thought he ran an absolute cracker in the Lincoln first time up. And he was then only narrowly beaten at York off a 1 point higher mark. He's got up another £3 for that. But he is progressive. He's a 4-year-old who just essentially keeps getting better when he gets conditions in his favour. He's been unplaced a couple of times in heavy ground listed races. Not really what he wants. He wants a sound surface, big field, strongly run mile. And when he gets that, he runs really well. I thought, as I said, in the Lincoln, at that meeting, it was difficult for front runners generally, and he didn't make the running in that, but he made his move much earlier than the winner, and I think that sort of played into Kiki's hands. His Michael Dodds was struggling for winners when he was second at York. We still run a cracking race there, and he's got a lovely setup here. He's going to race in midfield. There's plenty of pace around him, and he'll be finishing off strongly. So, given that he's still improving, he seems to have plenty of things in his favour. I want to be with him. And the other one that I'm with is Grove Ferry, who was a little disappointing. Again, doing plenty of work from the front with a claimer riding him at Doncaster. That day he had a penalty to carry for winning a conditions race at Lingfield in his previous start. He got back to winning ways at Chester last time out, and I thought that was a big run at Chester. The interesting thing about it, and I think the key to him in this race, is he missed the kick, and he has a habit of just missing the kick at the start, which is a big negative at most tracks. But for me, almost a positive at Ascot, because it means that you get cover very quickly, and when he doesn't get cover, he can be a little bit free. But he missed the break, had to wait on the rail at Chester, then didn't have a run when he came out for it in the first place in the straight, had to switch twice, and eventually came around the outside of them. Now, they went fast there. And in the end, he was helped by that. But they're going to go fast here as well, and that will suit him. And in that race at Chester, he beat Dulas, who made the running, and Dulas has gone on to win again next time. And Kinran was third that day. Very reliable horse, Kinran. He won in his next start to show that he was well handicapped there as well. And you've also had a win from both another Bat, who was back in sixth that day, and Ascension, who finished last, has also won. I think Crown Thought's run a very good race. It was narrowly beaten into second in his next start. So it's red hot handicap form. And I think the most important aspect there is the way it panned out for Grove Ferry. He had to be weighted with, whereas he raced handily. He made all the running at Lingfield in his previous start when Ryan Moore rode him. And then on the Lincoln, he was always handy, and I think that counted against him. He didn't finish as strongly as he could. Whereas at Chester last time out, because he had to wait, he was seen to best effect, finishing best of all. And I think getting a run near the rail here and having other horses to shield him from the worst of the pace will again see him finishing off strongly. And although he's gone up 4 pounds in the weights for that, I still think that's fair enough, and he should run a cracking race.
Grove Ferry is 14 to 1. Being back, honestly, I'm watching the blue on oddschecker go as we're talking about Grove Ferry. I don't know what cameras you've got in your room there, but people are listening in. 14 to 1 is still around, but going to 12s in most places. So by the time you're watching or listening to this, it might be 12s or shorter. Brunch 16 to 1 as it stands at the moment. Andy?
As soon as the entries and the weights came out for this race, well, the entries actually, I didn't even need to see the weights. I backed Grove Ferry. What
price? Time for a brag?
Yes. No, I'm not going to say what price I got. No, I think that'd be unjust of me to say. It's better than 14 to 1. That's all I will say. Based on the numbers that he did at Chester, obviously Rory's highlighted the form. It's not a great surprise to see that race at Chester work out so well. I kicked myself when Kinran went on to win. I think he won the week after at York. How I missed that, I do not know. It was the biggest miss of the season for me because he'd run well from a terrible draw at Chester on the wing. But it's been a race that's worked out well, as Rory's already said. Doulas, Kinran, Itala, another bat, even Ascension, who finished last, has won. And I thought Grove Ferry, like Rory, won with a bit up his sleeve that day. He actually kind of like almost pricked his ears as he went over the line, but that was the perfect setup for him, as Rory said. He needs to miss the kick. He needs to come through late. The 2 times that he's run here at Ascot, just don't think that things have quite gone quite right for him. They've been small fields, and I don't think he was quite the horse he is now. I think he's matured as this season's gone on. His victory along the season at Lingfield near Weather's given him a lot of confidence, and he can forget his Doncaster run, albeit he wasn't a bad run behind Hakiki. But I think drawn stall 30, it'll give licence for Pro, but just to fiddle away up the near side rail. I'd imagine Mandani will lead, drawn 24. All the best horses, all the places stand side. So if he gets the cover we think he will, I'd almost be sure that he'll be involved in the finish in some way, shape or form. I've got a huge amount of time for Hakiki. That Lincoln win has worked out really well. I thought things didn't quite work out for him on his first start here at Ascot, back at the main meeting when he was held about the back, but he hit the front. He was travelling that well. He hit the front going past the intersection, going from the 3 to the 2. Then he got forced out right to the right-hand side out on the wing. And unlike Doncaster, when he was held up and covered up to the last minute and produced for his turn of foot, he was just in front far too soon. I think Crowley will, again from stall 21, give him plenty of chance. And he's a very talented horse, Hakiki. He wouldn't have been out of place in the Queen Anne. And I certainly think you've got to give Astro King a favourable mention. It's a race that I don't think Sir Michael Stout normally targets. I don't think he looks to particularly right. He's my Royal Hunt Cup horse, like Gosden won. But he got a horrific ride in the Thurston Cup. He had one behind him with 3 to run, and he finished a creditable 3rd. Surprised that Nugget, their horse that finished 2nd, is not in this, because I thought he would have been tailor-made for this. But I think he's going to be very, very popular. I'd see him going off at single-figure quotes, and he's drawn 27 as well. So that's my short list of 3. I've already backed Grove Ferry. Probably go up on my column on Wednesday morning. Not going to desert him now. And with sort of a lot of firms probably betting 5, 6, even 7 places on the day, looking for your business. I don't think it's a bad race to have one or 2 or even 3 each-way bets, particularly if you're ruling out those that are drawn low. I think only 4 horses have been placed in the last decade drawn in single figures. So it's a race where you can just concentrate on the high draw. I think 6 out of the last 10 have been drawn 21 or higher. I'm not ashamed to be having 2 or 3 each-way bets in a race like this.
Yeah, I think looking at it now, just looking, the Sky Bet prices for the Royal Hunt Cup have come out, and they are 8 places. So the sponsors of this podcast are paying 8 places.
Well,
you've got Finest Sound.
If you roll out 1 to 10, you're left with a 20-runner field, and then you concentrate on 21 upwards. I've nominated 3 also drawn 21, 27, 30. And you're betting 8 places. The chances are that at least 2 of those also will be in the first 3, so you're going to get virtually your money back, and the jack comes up, obviously one of them wins. So that's the way I'd my strategy for the race anyway would be to do that.
Yeah, the 8 places there with Sky Bet, so long as there are 22 runners or more, 28 in there at the moment, so you should be fine, you'd think, from that. Reserves as well.
So
exactly.
There's a good chance of getting a full complement.
Finest Sound, the favourite, is out of stall 9. So as Andy's saying there, it really opens up the race if you do look at it that way. Hakiki is 9-1 with Sky Bet, 10-1 best price elsewhere, but without the extra places. Astro King 12-1 with Sky Bet, Grove Ferry 12-1 with Sky Bet as well. Those are the only firm paying those 8 places. So that could be the way to go in that one. On then to the penultimate race of the day, it is the Windsor Castle, and another race where Wesley Ward seems to have the best hand in the race at the moment with Ruthin, ridden by Frankie Dettori, who is 130. Sky Bet again here paying 6 places, more than any other firm. Dig 2 10-1, Amalfi Coast 10-1, Golden Bell 10-1. Armour 12-1, very impressive on debut. Tipperary Sunset 12-1 as well. Booney 14-1, Flaming Rib 16-20-1 bar. And again, we've got another Ward horse at the top of the market, but a fair few in below who I think can stake a claim, certainly an each way claim here with that 6 places available. Yeah,
it's a race that Wesley Ward made his name back in the years when I think it was his first winner was in this race. And he's got 2 difficult ones to fathom. Ruthin was anti-post favourite for the Queen Mary. She now comes here to this easier race. That's probably indicative of the fact that she got probably not the most high profile of works the other day at Keeneland. But I didn't think she impressed me as well as one or 2 others. I was actually more impressed with Golden Bell, his stable companion, who's a much bigger price. And I like the way she won on her debut. Also at the same track early on in the season. And Johnny Valesky's riding her as well. So I would probably prefer Golden Bell, particularly at 10-1. I'm really disappointed, not annoyed, but just slightly disappointed that Armour has bagged stall 4. I thought the Norfolk was going to be the plan. That was the original plan. But I think maybe Richard Hannon has had a little bit of foresight and he's looked at the weather forecast.
Yeah.
Because if it did rain, this son of No Nay Never, won on good to firm ground first time out, would have been inconvenienced the most in the Norfolk. So I'm quite glad in some respects it's coming here because at least it's got good ground to run on and not running in potential fog on Thursday in the Norfolk. But stall 4 has to be of some concern. If I'm saying that the high draw dominating the hunt we don't want to bet on high numbers, then I'm not going to contradict myself here. But look, it's a 5-furlong race, a tier race, a different dynamic to a big field straight track mile race with handicappers. It's not totally dead in the water, but my gut feeling is that probably the high numbers might dominate again. So that's slightly poured cold water on my theory with Armour. What I'll do on the day now, I don't know. I might, like I said, I might seriously have a look at Golden Bell. She worked all over her work companion the other day at Keeneland, and I like her attitude. So maybe she could be the one for the Wesley Ward camp.
Golden Bell 10-1 best price at the moment. 9-1 with Sky Bet with that 5th to 6th places. Rory?
Yeah, it's interesting that Ruthin wasn't enormously impressive and that she's going for this rather than the Queen Mary, given she would have been top rated for that, and she was very impressive on debut at Keeneland. The other interesting thing about her is her pedigree. She doesn't have a US pedigree. She's by Ribchester out of a mare called Selinka, who was runner-up in the Sandringham Stakes back to that day. I think win only as well at about 50-1, which is very annoying. She was very talented, Selinka, ran on the time charter colours, but she was a little bit ungenuine as well, and she went the wrong way. So yeah, it's interesting that maybe there are mixed messages about Ruthin, who would look at a strong choice otherwise. But the presence of the second Wes Ward horse in a filly in a wide stall there, or a high stall rather, I should say, a Golden Bell, again suggests that this might be useful for the horses drawn high. Again, there might not be a massive draw bias in this, but if, as we expect, the Hunt Cup ends up having all of the horses converging on the stands rail, then they're inclined to race like that in the next race as well. Even if it might pan out differently because it's a different trick. So if all the jockeys have it in their mind that there's a draw bias based on the previous race, then they're likely to try to track across, and that makes it difficult. If you're drawn in stall 3 or 4 and you try to come across to the stand side, you're giving away an awful lot of ground, and you've got to be a superstar to win. So again, I'd be more inclined to stick with those drawn high. It's a difficult race to be confident about. I have a sneaking fancy for an outsider in the shape of Ernie's Valentine. from stall 27 of 28. He's a son of Havana Gold, who is a half-brother to Montatham, who was second in the Hunt Cup last year. Proper Ascot breeding. Paul Coles won this race many moons ago. And I thought Ernest Valentine shaped pretty well on debut at Leicester. It wasn't a great race. The time wasn't absolutely exceptional, but I think he'd improve a fair bit for it. He was quietly backed that day as if plenty was expected. But again, the days when you could back Paul Coles 2-year-olds on debut, knowing that they were going to be well tuned up, that went a fair while ago. And I think there'll be quite a large degree of improvement from Ernest Valentine. And again, unlike a few of these, he's not been making the pace on his debut, so he can come from behind runners. And I can see him running on strongly late in the day. Again, on his pedigree, I would say he's not a 5 furlong horse down the line. He's more of a 6 furlong 2-year-old. But again, if I'm backing horse each way in a race like this, I want to see them doing their best work late on. And I think he probably will. It would be a small bet because it's a huge field, and there's an awful lot we're taking on trust here. But Ernest Valentine is interesting at potentially quite a big price.
Yeah, Ernest Valentine best price 33-1, but 25-1 with the 6 places currently with Sky Bet. A big price one there for Rory. Last race of the day we're getting to now is the Kensington Palace Stakes. Where we have got Lights On is the 5-1 favourite ahead of Dream Loper 8-1. So I told you 17-2. Stunning Beauty 9-1, mostly 10-1, 11-1 both Lola Showgirl and Declared Interest, 12-1 Caspian Queen, 16-1 Bar. Rory, take us away for the last race on day 2.
It's a slightly odd contest, and a lot of those with strong form here would not be natural milers. Caspian Queen ran really well last time out. I see Sean Woods back on these shores, but she was an impressive winner on the all-weather Kempton over 7, and she was campaigned over 6 by her previous yard. It may well be that she's got lots of stamina that's not been tapped yet, and she'd be interesting there, but she's not been running over the trip. Lola Showgirl similarly has got form at a mile, but looks better at 7 furlongs, and mostly is interesting. Again, it's worth touching on the draw here. Your inclination is not to want to be drawn too high, but actually historically, you'd much rather be drawn in double-figure stall than be drawn 1 or 2 in a big field around Ascot, around the bend. So don't be put off by a wide draw. Mostly drawn in stall 14. That is not really a concern. She didn't stay a mile and a quarter last time out at Nottingham, but she was a little bit free anyway. But she'll benefit from the drop back to a mile, and I'd have her on my short list. I like Theon, but again, she's been running at 7 furlongs. Miss Mulligan can win races, but she's been running over a mile and a half. Her dam was a Ribblesdale winner. And the other one is quite interesting. Again, another one dropping back in trip. Wallyack. Now, she was runner-up at the meeting last year. She was runner-up on the Sandringham off a mark of 84. She showed better form after that at a mile and a quarter. But again, I get the impression that you want a filly that stays a mile and a quarter in this contest. It's going to be run at a strong pace. It's going to put a premium on stamina. So although Wallyack hasn't had a run this season, you never lack for fitness with a Roger Varian returner. So she should be at her best. I was sort of looking for her to run over a mile and a quarter, but the more I look at this race, the more I think the extra stamina that she has, and the fact that she's been placed at the meeting over a mile is in her favour, and she would just about be the pick of the prices for me.
So that is Wallyack at best price at the moment, 16-1. That is with Sky Bet, who are 5 places. Andy?
I think one of those talented horses in the race, without doubt, is Dream Loper. I do think she comes with a little bit of a warning attached, but she's quite quirky. She wears the hood for a reason. I don't think she's been declared in a hood, but she has had the hood on in the past, just to pacify her a little bit. The small field last time out behind Lights On probably didn't suit her. But I've always felt like a big field, strong run handicap would bring the best out in her. Some of her best performances have come when there's been a very strong pace. And they're unlikely to hang around here. I can't remember an 18 run a field on the round track here. Don't forget this is a new race and it's on the round track, not the straight track. Like I said, I can't remember an 18 run a field coming from that mile start. So it's going to be a bit of a bun fight, this, which makes punting very, very difficult. I think you're going to have a horse that gets a huge dollop of luck in it. But Dream Loper, like I say, she's got a good cruising speed. I think she'll give herself every chance because she's got such a good way of going. She stays the mile really, really well. She's gone well on a round track before as well, on a right-handed round track, so that's not a problem. Yeah, she's been a big eye catch on the first 2 runs this season. I do like Ed Walker in these kind of handicaps with his fillies. He's done well in the past with this kind of horse. So yeah, Dream Loper would be one that I'd definitely look to keep on side in some way.
Dream Loper 8-1, best price as it stands at the moment. Before we finish the podcast and video, I'm going to ask you both for your naps of the day. So whilst you come up with that, I'm just going to remind the listeners and viewers to please download the oddschecker app for the best prices, best bookie offers, place terms, tipsters such as Andy and across all other sports too. Do download the oddschecker app. And of course, thank you very much to our sponsor Sky Bet, who have that cracking offer, money back as cash for your first bet, win singles or the win part of each way bets in the Prince of Wales. T's and C's do apply, 18 plus only. Andy, what's the nap of day 2? Armory, straight in. Armory.
Yeah. No hesitation, yeah.
The nap of day 2. Rory?
I'm inclined to go Lord North and go straight against Andy there, but I'm not really. I see him going off favourite Lord North. I'm not the kind of guy to nap horses at 2-1 or shorter as he's liable to be. So I will go Grove Ferry in the Hunt Cup.
Very diplomatic of you, Rory. Didn't want you to come to virtual blows over Zoom. And that's another one that Andy's backed as well. So that is good. Hopefully, I'm sure there's some value there. I've been watching over the weekend some of the selections and stuff shortening for day 1. So anybody who hasn't listened or watched that, do go back and find it. You can find all of these previews on any podcast platform, or you can subscribe to our YouTube channel where you'll find them there as well. This has been our day 2 preview. We're about to record day 3 and day 4, and then we'll record day 5 again on Wednesday. So do look out for those. Do download the oddschecker app and subscribe to this content elsewhere. Hopefully some winners in there, but please, most importantly, enjoy the racing and please do gamble responsibly.